December 18th, 2025, 4:47 a.m. Central European Time. In a conference room overlooking Lake Geneva, BlackRock's Global Infrastructure Committee concluded a meeting that would fundamentally alter the ownership structure of European energy systems. The decision, documented in Internal Memorandum GIC 2025-847, authorized the deployment of $890 billion across 47 strategic acquisitions that would give BlackRock operational control over approximately 34% of Europe's electrical generation and distribution infrastructure. The memorandum, marked board eyes only and distributed to fewer than 12 individuals worldwide, contained a timeline that defied conventional infrastructure investment strategies. Phase 1 acquisitions were to be completed within 90 days. Phase 2 consolidation would occur over 6 months. Phase 3 integration would establish BlackRock as Europe's largest private energy operator by December 2026. The speed and scale suggested coordination that extended far beyond normal market mechanisms. Within 18 hours, BlackRock subsidiary companies initiated simultaneous acquisition offers for energy assets across 17 European countries. The targets were not random, but strategically selected. Grid transmission operators in Germany, renewable energy portfolios in Spain, nuclear facilities in France, offshore wind developments in the North Sea. Each acquisition was structured to avoid regulatory triggers that would require government approval or public disclosure. But the most revealing aspect of the operation was what didn't happen. No leaked information to financial media, no regulatory inquiries from European authorities, no competitive bidding from other institutional investors. The largest private energy acquisition in European history proceeded with the mechanical efficiency of a pre-planned operation, suggesting that regulatory approval had been secured through channels that bypassed normal oversight mechanisms. The silence was not accidental but orchestrated. BlackRock's Government Relations Division had spent 18 months conducting informal consultations with energy ministers, regulatory officials, and European Commission staff. The consultations were not recorded as lobbying activities and generated no public documentation, but they established the political foundation for an energy acquisition that would have been impossible without government cooperation. BlackRock's European energy strategy had been developing since the COVID-19 crisis revealed the vulnerability of European energy systems to supply chain disruption and geopolitical pressure. The Russian invasion of Ukraine accelerated European recognition that energy independence required massive private investment that government budgets could not provide. BlackRock positioned itself as the solution to European energy security through private capital deployment at unprecedented scale. The investment thesis was elegant in its simplicity. European governments needed energy transition financing, but lacked fiscal capacity for required infrastructure investment. Private capital could provide immediate funding in exchange for long-term operational control over energy assets that would generate predictable returns for decades. European energy security and American financial returns could be achieved through the same transaction structure. BlackRock's approach differed fundamentally from traditional infrastructure investment. Rather than acquiring individual projects or minority stakes, the firm was systematically purchasing controlling interests in entire energy sectors. Wind energy in Denmark, hydroelectric systems in Norway, solar installations across Mediterranean countries, grid transmission networks that connected renewable sources to urban consumption centers. The acquisitions were structured through a complex web of subsidiary companies, special purpose vehicles, and offshore entities that obscured the extent of BlackRock's growing control over European energy infrastructure. Individual transactions appeared routine and competitive. The aggregate effect was the transfer of energy sovereignty from European governments to American financial management. European officials had been briefed on BlackRock's strategy through confidential presentations that emphasized mutual benefits and shared objectives. Energy transition would accelerate through private capital deployment. European energy security would improve through professional asset management. American investment would strengthen transatlantic alliance cooperation. The presentations were persuasive, technically sophisticated, and carefully designed to minimize focus on the sovereignty implications of foreign control over critical infrastructure. The official European position, communicated through carefully worded statements from the European Commission and national energy ministries, emphasized public-private partnership opportunities and innovative financing mechanisms for energy transition. No mention was made of foreign ownership percentages or operational control arrangements. The language was designed to suggest European control over European energy systems, even as that control was being transferred to American financial institutions. But the silence concealed growing concern among European security officials who recognized the strategic implications of energy infrastructure ownership by foreign entities. Internal assessments, classified at the EU secret level, warned that BlackRock's energy acquisitions could create vulnerabilities to economic pressure that military alliance structures could not address. European energy security was being compromised through legal mechanisms that NATO frameworks could not protect. Energy sovereignty. Transfer BlackRock. Its systematic acquisition of European energy assets represented the largest transfer of critical infrastructure control from sovereign governments to private foreign entities in modern European history. The firm's investment strategy targeted the entire energy value chain: generation facilities, transmission networks, distribution systems, and energy storage infrastructure that together comprised the backbone of European industrial civilization. The transfer was not merely financial, but operational. BlackRock's energy management division assumed direct control over power generation scheduling, grid maintenance priorities, investment allocation for system upgrades, and pricing mechanisms that determined energy costs for European consumers and businesses. European governments retained regulatory authority but ceded operational control to American financial management. The implications extended beyond energy pricing to economic competitiveness and national security. Countries with BlackRock-controlled energy systems would face energy allocation decisions made in New York rather than national capitals. Industrial policy would be constrained by investment priorities determined by American shareholders rather than European strategic interests. Energy security would depend on the financial performance requirements of the world's largest asset manager. European manufacturers faced the prospect of energy costs determined by global financial markets rather than domestic political considerations. Energy-intensive industries including steel, aluminum, chemicals, and glass production operated on margins that could be eliminated by energy price fluctuations, driven by BlackRock as portfolio optimization rather than European economic needs. Financial system integration. BlackRock's energy acquisitions created unprecedented integration between American financial markets and European energy systems. The firm's energy assets were incorporated into exchange-traded funds, institutional investment products, and retirement accounts that linked European energy performance to American financial returns. European energy systems became instruments of American financial policy in ways that traditional trade relationships had never achieved. The integration operated through complex financial mechanisms that connected European energy production to American capital markets. Energy revenues were structured to provide predictable returns to BlackRock investors while maintaining operational flexibility for portfolio optimization. European energy consumers were effectively financing American investment returns through utility payments that supported BlackRock's global financial operations. Currency exposure created additional complexity as European energy assets generated euro-denominated revenues while serving dollar-denominated investment products. BlackRock's currency hedging strategies could influence exchange rates in ways that affected European competitiveness and American export advantages. Energy infrastructure investment had become a mechanism for monetary policy transmission that central bank frameworks did not address. The financial integration also created systemic risks that European regulators could not manage independently. BlackRock's energy assets were subject to global portfolio optimization that could result in asset sales, operational changes, or investment redirections that served American financial objectives while compromising European energy security. European energy systems had become subordinate to American financial performance requirements. Geopolitical leverage creation. BlackRock's control over European energy infrastructure created unprecedented opportunities for American economic influence over European political decisions. Energy allocation decisions made in New York could support or penalize European countries based on their alignment with American foreign policy objectives. Energy systems had become instruments of geopolitical influence that operated below the threshold of traditional alliance management. The leverage was particularly significant during periods of international crisis, when energy security became paramount for European governments. BlackRock's operational control over critical infrastructure could be used to encourage European cooperation with American strategic objectives or discourage European policies that conflicted with American interests. Energy dependence had been transferred from Russian political control to American financial control. European defense capabilities faced particular vulnerability as energy-intensive military systems depended on BlackRock-controlled power generation and distribution networks. Defense industrial production, military base operations, and strategic infrastructure all required energy supplies that were now subject to American financial management rather than European sovereign control. Military independence had been compromised through energy infrastructure ownership. The implications extended to European relations with China, Russia, and other strategic competitors whose economic relationships with Europe could be constrained through energy system management. BlackRock's operational control over European energy infrastructure created opportunities for indirect economic pressure that traditional sanctions and trade policies could not achieve. Technological dependence. BlackRock's energy acquisitions included not only physical infrastructure, but also the technological systems that controlled energy generation, distribution, and consumption across Europe. Smart grid technologies, renewable energy management systems, and energy storage coordination were integrated into BlackRock's global technology platforms that operated from American data centers under American legal jurisdiction. European energy systems became dependent on American technology platforms for basic operational functions, including load balancing, demand forecasting, and emergency response coordination. The technology dependence created vulnerabilities to cyber disruption, system manipulation, and data collection that European governments could not control through domestic regulation or oversight. The integration also facilitated technology transfer from European energy innovation to American commercial applications. European research and development in renewable energy, grid modernization, and energy storage was incorporated into BlackRock's intellectual property portfolio and commercialized through American technology companies, rather than European industrial development. The moment of irreversible transformation occurred on January 15, 2026, when the European Central Bank's Financial Stability Review classified BlackRock as European energy holdings as systemically important financial infrastructure, subject to special regulatory oversight. The classification was intended to provide European authorities with enhanced supervisory powers, but it instead formalized BlackRock's status as an essential component of European financial and energy systems. The ECB's analysis revealed that BlackRock's energy assets had become so integrated with European financial markets that their disruption would trigger cascading failures across banking, insurance, and pension systems throughout the European Union. European financial stability now depended on BlackRock's continued operation of energy infrastructure, that European governments could not operate independently without triggering systemic financial crisis. The classification also established legal precedent that recognized BlackRock's operational control over European energy infrastructure as legitimate and necessary for financial system stability. European authorities could regulate BlackRock's activities but could not terminate the firm and its energy operations without risking financial system collapse. BlackRock had achieved too big to fail status in European energy markets through systematic infrastructure acquisition. European governments faced the recognition that energy sovereignty had been irreversibly transferred to American financial management through legal mechanisms that could not be reversed without catastrophic economic consequences. The choice was no longer between European control and American control, but between American control and systemic economic collapse. The implications extended beyond energy policy to fundamental questions of European sovereignty and democratic governance. Critical infrastructure decisions that affected European citizens were now made by American financial institutions, accountable to American investors, rather than European voters. European democracy had been constrained by financial arrangements that European political systems could not modify or terminate. European security officials privately acknowledged that traditional concepts of national sovereignty were obsolete in an interconnected economy where critical infrastructure could be controlled by foreign entities through financial mechanisms that domestic political institutions could not challenge. The modern economy had evolved beyond the capacity of democratic governance to maintain sovereign control over essential systems. 6 months after BlackRock's European energy acquisition campaign began, the firm controlled operational authority over energy systems that powered approximately 180 million European homes and businesses. The transition had proceeded without significant technical disruption or political controversy, but the implications for European sovereignty and democratic governance were profound and irreversible. The crisis had revealed something more fundamental than infrastructure ownership or financial dependence. It had exposed the inability of European democratic institutions to maintain sovereign control over essential systems in a globalized economy where financial mechanisms could achieve what military conquest had historically required. BlackRock had accomplished through legal investment what no foreign power had achieved through military force: operational control over the energy systems that sustained European industrial civilization. European leaders faced the recognition that sovereignty itself had been redefined by financial globalization in ways that political institutions had not adapted to address. Traditional concepts of national control over critical infrastructure were obsolete when global capital markets could acquire operational authority through investment mechanisms that domestic political systems could not prevent or reverse. The response was institutional adaptation rather than resistance. European governments began restructuring regulatory frameworks to accommodate foreign ownership of critical infrastructure while attempting to maintain political influence over operational decisions. The result was hybrid governance systems, where sovereign authority was shared with financial institutions rather than exercised independently. International financial markets had fundamentally repriced European sovereignty as European energy systems became components of global investment portfolios rather than national strategic assets. European political decisions were now constrained by financial performance requirements that served global investors rather than European citizens. Democracy had been subordinated to investment returns in ways that political theory had not anticipated. The BlackRock energy acquisition represented more than infrastructure investment. It marked the emergence of a new form of international relationship. where financial control over critical systems created influence that traditional diplomatic and military power could not match. The age of energy sovereignty was ending, replaced by systems designed for investment optimization rather than national control. The silence that had characterized the initial acquisition campaign had given way to careful management of permanent transformation. European energy systems would never return to the sovereign control that had characterized their operations since industrialization began, but neither would they return to the inefficiency and political constraints that had limited their development under government management. In the end, the BlackRock acquisition represented a choice that European societies had made without fully understanding its implications. Financial efficiency over political control, investment performance over democratic accountability, global integration over national sovereignty. Whether this choice would prove beneficial or catastrophic would depend on BlackRock's management of systems that European governments could no longer control, but European citizens could not survive without. The transformation was complete, irreversible, and fundamentally uncertain in its ultimate consequences for European democracy and American financial power.